I can't really do it with my right hand. But with left? No problem. Live long and prosper. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage. I've reviewed about 400 indie movies on the channel, and today's one was once again picked directly for us by one of our awesome Masala Meister tier supporters. Vijay Akineni chose the new Telugu language romantic comedy Ante Sundaraniki. It is the third film that was written and directed by Vivek Athreya. I have yet to watch his debut Mental Madilo, but you can already find my review to his second one, which I don't try to pronounce again, by following this link. Ante Sundaraniki was first released theatrically this June, but only got a lukewarm reception at the box office. Since a few weeks ago, you can now watch it on Netflix, and if you're looking for a sweet, feel-good entertainer and you don't mind that it's also 3 hours long, which it really doesn't need to be, I can certainly recommend it. The title Ante Sundaraniki can be translated as The Thing About Sunda Is, and it of course refers to our protagonist, who is played by one of the most beloved superstars of Telugu cinema, Nani. And his co-star, making her Telugu debut, is the wonderful Nazriya Nazim. The basic story is pretty simple. He is from an Orthodox Hindu Brahmin family and she is of Christian upbringing. So, if their families knew about their romance, they would most certainly oppose it. Which is why Sunda and Leela come up with these special plans and lies to make their parents approve of their relationship nevertheless. It's a very classic and simple story, but the storytelling is much more sophisticated, playful and maybe a tad too convoluted, but it was still certainly a highlight of the film. Director and screenwriter Vivek Athreya seems to have a knack for presenting his stories in this clever, non-linear fashion. In my review for his last film, I also mentioned how twisty his story was and that it seems that Indian audiences are really into these big twists and turns. Now, Ante Sundaraniki doesn't have huge twists in a typical way, but it's more about how this story is told. How Vivek Athreya presents us these small and big red herrings along the way, only to then reveal that things are a bit different than we assumed. After the opening credits, we begin with a little flashback to the year 1999, when both Sunda and Neela are still children and performing the little school play. It's a pretty nice starting point and one that we get back to several times. Both by directly showing parts of it again, but also thematically, which I really liked. Because this play is about casteism and tolerance, seeing through the antiquated and cruel customs that separate us from each other. And while the audience is applauding this, still they follow the same old stupid customs and traditions at home, which I think makes for a nice and thoughtful backdrop for this at heart really charming and lighthearted romantic comedy. But before we get to the actual romance part, we first have to find out why Sunda is talking to this other woman, retelling his life story to her, and why he wants to go to America. The movie sets up these questions and this mystery element, and it takes us onto a journey that jumps between different time periods in Sunda's life. When he was a child, a teenager, and now finally in his late 20s, I assume. There's even a little warning at the very beginning to let the audience know. It says, please get tuned to these forwards and rewinds. Ante Sundaraniki and many other Indian movies that we have seen more or less directly incorporate the concept of storytelling into their narrative. And I find that quite interesting. People love to hear stories, love to tell stories. They learn about the world through stories. They learn to think and express and feel through stories. Like in his previous film, Vivek Athreya lets someone narrate a story, or actually several stories, and by the end of Ante Sundaraniki it will have become a nice running gag that Sunda always needs 1 hour of someone's life to tell him his story. Most of the time that someone is his boss from work, who is played by Harshavardhan. And their banter is really great and just like a really long working relationship in which both parties know perfectly well how good or how bad the other is at their job. The chemistry that's of course way more important though is that between Nani and Nazriya Nazim. And fortunately it's really strong. Both actors have really shown up to play these roles and to shine. They are wonderful together and their charm, both on their own as well as together, is probably the main reason why the movie works so well. In the past, I have said many times how it takes me out of a movie if an actor that is already way older still plays someone in their youth or early adulthood. But I have to say, if someone can pull it off, it's Nani. Thankfully, there aren't that many scenes in which he plays a version of Sundar who is just done with school, but in those, he still has that youthful energy and it's believable. But what I really have to mention is that they did a fantastic job in also casting these young actors for when Sundar and Leela were still children. Both Vinny as the young Sundar and Harika Koyilama as the young Leela are fantastic. Not only do they really resemble their older counterparts, but they are also quite charming and funny themselves. And Vinny is also really impressive in this little song and dance number early on, showcasing some great dance moves. But what's also so nice is that Ante Sundaraniki combines both of its strengths, the wonderful cast and the playful storytelling, because there are moments in which the adult Sundar and Neela are interacting with their young counterparts and coming up with ideas and plans how they can make their families accept their love. Now, I have said that the storytelling is certainly a bit convoluted, and you wonder if it's really necessary to tell the story in this way for it to have the emotional impact and bring across the themes. And for an outsider like me, it certainly feels a little bit like a way to justify the really long runtime of nearly 3 hours. It sometimes becomes a bit too much this never-ending rom-com romp, in which scenes and emotional highlights dilute and blur into one another. But it's also just fun, and I knew about the runtime beforehand and just accepted it. Does it need to be this long? Certainly not, but it at least kept me interested and entertained throughout. It can be a bit much, but it doesn't overwhelm you either. Though I wish the soundtrack by Vivek got more to me. There are some nice touches, but overall it felt a bit too overproduced and also hacked up for my own taste. Not letting the music, the movie and the audience breathe enough. Calm down a bit more or take clearer structural breaks and transitions. Certain elements are also a bit heavy-handed, for example the scene in which Neela decides to become a photographer. But then again, I also really enjoyed that there were many elements that were used as through lines throughout the movie, appearing or getting planted early on and then occurring again or getting paid off later on. The biggest one is certainly how Sundar's grandmother is playing music as an expression of approval. That was really moving. And just that it doesn't get unmentioned, but the supporting cast who play the family members of Sundar and Neela are really nice as well. So, in German I'd say, Ante Sundaraniki ist eine charmante und zwar etwas überladen, aber dennoch clever erzählte romantische Komödie, die mit seinem tollen Cast einfach Spaß macht. I give Ante Sundaraniki 7 out of 10. It's more like 7.1, but I don't do that. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Ante Sundaraniki. And also, which Nani movie should I watch next? You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd and also on Patreon, simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.